Hello. Today we're making two versions of a sous vide chicken liver pâté or mousse. Mousse is a subcategory of pâté and has to do with the texture of the end product. While this is technically a mousse, I will be referring to it as pâté. One of these will be carnivore and the other a more traditional version, which is naturally ketogenic. It's important to remember that a lot of excellent recipes are traditionally ketogenic, meaning that they have a very low or even null carbohydrate load without any alteration. First, we're going to prepare the chicken livers. These are standard grocery store chicken livers. I've emptied them into a sieve so that the liquids, mostly myoglobin, have drained. I also ran a little water over them to rinse them and placed the sieve in a metal bowl so it could continue to drain while I prep the livers. I have not and would never soak them in anything, ever. They are highly absorbent, and a great way to ruin texture is to soak organ meat. If you soak properly butchered organ meat, that is your choice, but I am judging you. It's important to go through chicken liver by hand because we need to look for livers where the gallbladder wasn't properly removed. You can distinguish the liver from the gallbladder because the gallbladder is rounded on all sides and is roughly the size and shape of a grape. Under no circumstances do you ever want to cook a gallbladder with your chicken livers. It will taint the flavor of the entire dish and it will taste awful. Vomit tastes like bile, which is what is made in the gallbladder. And that is exactly what gallbladder tastes like. Just remember that when you're feeling like you want to skip this step. In general, when I prepare chicken liver, I separate the liver segments. This is less important with this recipe as we will be using a stick blender to puree the entire mixture after cooking. However, it's good to note, should you have any extra that you want to saute as a snack, that cutting them up first is helpful. Please don't wrinkle your nose at this. Chicken liver sauteed in butter and lightly salted is delicious. When making chicken liver pâté, you will use an equal amount of chicken liver and fat by weight. I'm using melted butter today, but chicken or duck fat are excellent choices for this recipe, and I strongly recommend using them instead if you have them available. Oh, look, yet another gallbladder. This batch had more than one. This is very important to spot and remove before cooking. Right now, I'm weighing 1 pound of liver twice, one for the carnivore version and one for the more traditional keto version. I sous vide in jars whenever I can in order to avoid plastics, but 1 pound of liver and 1 pound of butter turned out to be a little much for the quart-sized jars that I have. So when you're making it, I recommend adjusting for the size of jar that you have and just making your best effort to have equal amounts of liver and fat by weight. I'm melting the butter on the stove top, but the microwave is fine. The primary goal is to melt most of the butter, but not heat the fat too much. You will want to combine the liver and butter in the jar while the butter is still liquid, but not hot enough to cook the liver on its own. For the carnivore-friendly version of the recipe, I'm adding butter, chicken liver, and salt to the jar. The butter is lightly warm, but not hot. I'm pouring in the butter first, and then I'm adding the chicken liver. As you can see, 1 pound of each is a little too much for the jar I'm using, so I will just set aside the extra liver to cook as a snack. After filling the jar, you want to make sure that there is enough space at the top of the jar. For this recipe, you will want at least the distance of the jar mouth, which is roughly 3/4 of an inch. This is to make sure there will be enough room to use the stick blender in the jar when it's done cooking. You will want a canning lid with a ring, and you will only tighten to finger tight, which means don't tighten it as much as you can with your full hand, just your fingertips. This allows air to escape while it's cooking, which prevents too much pressure from building up and cracking the jar. So it's a very important part of the cooking process. For the ketogenic version of the pâté, I'm adding several cloves of garlic and some freeze-dried thyme to the recipe. Bacon would also be good with this version, as would sautéed shallots or any other keto-friendly additions. A lot of traditional recipes will have cognac, but with a sous vide recipe, I would only use alcohol while sautéing the shallots or onions, as the alcohol cannot cook off and evaporate in the sous vide container. As you can see here, I'm compensating with this batch to add in slightly less butter, and will then adjust the amount of chicken liver accordingly so that I get a roughly equivalent amount of chicken liver and butter. Once again, after filling the jar, you want to make sure that there is enough space at the top of the jar. Again, this is going to be roughly 3/4 of an inch with this particular jar. This is to make sure there will be enough room to use the stick blender in the jar when it's done cooking. You will want a canning lid and a ring, and you will only tighten to finger tight, which again means don't tighten it as much as you can with your full hand, just your fingertips. This allows air to escape while it's cooking, which prevents too much pressure from building and cracking the jar. So I am sous videing, if that's a word, the chicken liver pâté ingredients at 155 degrees Fahrenheit for a minimum of 4 hours. I'm placing them into a pot tall enough so that I can cover the jars with water by at least 1/2 inch. I'm not adding the jars to an already heated water bath, as you do not want to place the jars into hot water. To prevent breaking the jars, you want to let the jar come up to heat gradually along with the water. With my recipe setting, I have the cooking timer automatically start after the water heats to reflect the fact that the jars are coming up to heat along with the water. Leaving them for longer than 4 hours is fine, and even preferable with the ketogenic version, as it allows the garlic to mellow nicely. After the cooking cycle is done, you will remove the jars from the hot water and let them cool a little. When they're cool enough to touch comfortably, you'll remove the jar lids, and using an immersion blender, you carefully start to puree the cooked ingredients. Once the pâté is fully emulsified, you can seal the jar and put it in the refrigerator if you wish, but it's easier to eat later if you then pour the hot liquid pâté into a form or a more accessible container. You will then seal this container and then place it in the refrigerator at least overnight so that it can fully set and solidify. The first jar we did was the ketogenic one. This one is the carnivore one, and we are going to go through the exact same process. So I'm going to speed it up to at least triple time. After sitting in the refrigerator overnight, our pâté is now ready to sample. It will firm up a little bit more if we leave it for longer, but it's certainly ready to taste right now and is a smooth, creamy texture. The flavor is rich and earthy, and it's delicious on its own or as part of charcuterie board. Enjoy!